Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you today and share some information that I hope that you'll find helpful. Um, I have given you some general descriptions of what narcolepsy is and the symptoms that are associated with narcolepsy, and I've included for you some of the things my patients have told me along the way. They have taught me so much about this disorder, and I really, truly listen to what they say and how they describe it. And I'd be interested in hearing how you guys describe your symptoms too. So hopefully this will be a journey that will be helpful. One of the things we want to do with describing these symptoms of narcolepsy, the cataplexy, sleepiness, all the different symptoms is so that you can help your family members, your office mates, your boss, whoever understand this illness. But we also got to help promote awareness among the medical community and with providers. I think we need to work really hard to help educate teachers so that they can be aware of some of the symptoms that they might be seeing in the pediatric or adolescent cases. So education and knowledge is power. So it's our job to figure out exactly how to describe these symptoms, share them with others, be aware of what to do, and let's move this force along. Narcolepsy has grown considerably over the last few years in education and awareness, but we still have a ways to go. So that's what I'm hoping for today, that we'll get some information that you might find helpful. Let me get my screen shared. There we go. Can everybody see it okay?
It looks great.
Okay, great, great, great. All right, so I called this lecture The Voice of Experience, how to clearly describe your narcolepsy symptoms, because as patients, you have the experience. You might not be able to put them in specific words, but if we get that message down, I think it will help your provider understand what kind of narcolepsy you have, if you have type 1 or type 2, what all kinds of symptoms are interfering with your functioning, how you're doing throughout the day. So I hope that this will be helpful for you, but I recognize that the experts are the patients with narcolepsy. So we're listening. We want to hear. And I always use, try to anyway, when I do a narcolepsy lecture, this little puzzle piece somewhere in it, and somehow put in the title, putting the pieces together, because I think we're still trying to get there. All right. So narcolepsy is more than just sleepiness. Now, the only symptom they have to have the diagnosis of narcolepsy is excessive daytime sleepiness, but it's associated with so many things. Cataplexy can be subtle and hard to define, and may come about years after the diagnosis of hypersomnia. So there's a lot of knowledge we need to do about what cataplexy is and isn't, and what to look for. It can also be associated with sleep paralysis and hypnagogic hallucinations and disrupted nocturnal sleep. This is one that we definitely underestimate the severity of, and people around patients with narcolepsy certainly underestimate how significant the insomnia can be for people who have narcolepsy, as well as brain fog, depression, anxiety, and relationship issues. So let's first talk about excessive daytime sleepiness. We certainly have experts about that on this call, I'm sure, but the sleepiness can be described as being in and out of sleep. And that is true. People with narcolepsy have a disorder of the sleep-wake cycle, so they may have little intrusions of sleep into wake and wake into sleep. So really, the lights are on, the lights are off. It's a flickering sometimes, so they truly may be in and out of sleep. Can cause irresistible urges to nap. Some people who are really, really sleepy fidget. Kids do that a lot in school. They're really sleepy, they'll be fidgeting. People in church do that. If they're really sleepy, sometimes they're fidgeting to stay awake. So even though you might not see them looking sleepy, they might be like all over the place, fidgeting, yawning more, drooping eyelids, and of course, the head bobbing of falling asleep. You can see that certainly in church and in school too. And these are some of the ways my patients have described it. I can go to sleep with the snap of my finger. So that's how fast they go from awake to sleep. I could take a nap anywhere, anytime. I take my lunch and I nap immediately after work. I nap and I have to. I agree with that statement. If you have narcolepsy, naps are necessary. Daytime sleepiness causes irritability. It's difficult to do any task without being irritable. And this statement was so telling when the patient told me. It really made sense to me. I get so sleepy, it's painful. But notice the irritability. I can sleep when trying to maintain a conversation. So eyes are open, engaging with somebody, and the brain kind of goes off to sleep. And then the spouse, the coworker, your boss, somebody says, I told you that, but they're kind of asleep. When I'm sleepy, my brain feels full, kind of talking a little bit about the brain fog. There are these gaps, which are micro sleeps, where they may just briefly go to sleep. Once again, it's the flickering I talked about from wake to sleep and sleep to wake. I've had 3 accidents in 1 month from falling asleep at the wheel. I had to stop driving. There's another whole talk on safety and narcolepsy, but sometimes people with narcolepsy have such severe symptoms of narcolepsy and sleepiness that they have to not drive, or at least drive over, pull over and take naps. I have a lot of guilt because of my sleepiness and the narcolepsy limits. So the slide before this, they're talking about irritability. This slide, they're talking about guilt. I'm constantly moving because if I sit down, I fall asleep. The patient that told me about this, she said when she would come home from work, she would be cooking dinner and cleaning up and helping her kids and doing this, because the minute she sat down on that couch, she was going to sleep. So when she would complain of sleepiness, her spouse would say, well, you've been doing stuff all the time. But that's why she was up doing stuff all the time, so she wouldn't be sleepy. But the minute she sat down or the minute she went to bed, she was out of there. I fall asleep at school, at home, after school, and I can't do my homework. I'm so sleepy. I don't like to eat because every time I eat, I have to lay down and take a nap. Certain foods can make it worse, and it's important for people with narcolepsy to figure out how much to eat. Like big full meals can make them sleepier, and certain foods like carbohydrates. I have jumbled words and my comprehension is not good when sleepy. Another symptom that's often overlooked. The exhaustion leaves me overwhelmed, moody, and easily frustrated. I have relationship issues due to always being so out of it. It's not every day, but some days are worse than others. That's important to know about with narcolepsy, because some people around patients that have narcolepsy say, well, you did fine yesterday. You were okay last week. But that, in my opinion, is the same as diabetes and high blood pressure. Some days you're good, some days you're not. Sometimes you can identify what made it worse. Other times it's just worse. People always poke fun at me for napping, implying I'm lazy, and that's hurtful. And then this one, I have fallen asleep while standing up. She was on a clinical rotation and was very sleepy and just fell. It didn't sound like cataplexy, sounded like she went to sleep. So these slides, you can see a theme here. They're talking about irritability, guilt, frustration, being overwhelmed, being moody, being easily frustrated. So these symptoms lead to things that can lead to depression, which also can be associated with narcolepsy. So you have to keep that in mind. I think sometimes Providers are quick to dismiss these symptoms as being depression, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute, instead of looking at a sleep disorder. And they can run hand in hand, but these feelings are so real and so important to recognize. Okay, so let's talk about cataplexy. I found this quote from the scientific journal In the Sky of Pinterest, but I really liked the description of cataplexy. When you're filled with emotions, yet lack the strength to create a physical reaction. So cataplexy, as most of you know, is any transient muscle weakness that occurs with a strong emotion. And so we can get lost in that definition of what counts for a strong emotion, what emotions they are, and what the symptoms have to be. Most of the time, when we're talking to people about cataplexy, their vision of what narcolepsy with cataplexy is what they see on TV, falling straight to the ground, collapsing. And patients, providers, family members often overlook the subtle symptoms of cataplexy. And it's really, really important to try to identify these symptoms early on, keep checking for them, look for where they may be occurring and what emotion may be precipitating them. It's important in diagnosing whether you have narcolepsy type 1 or type 2. It's important in figuring out what medicines you're going to treat your narcolepsy with. If you've had cataplexy and you weren't quite aware of it, and we were treating with just stimulants, then we would be undertreating a symptom that is very much a part of the disorder. So understanding, identifying, talking with others about the cataplexy, in my opinion, is very important. Okay, and this picture I found, anger is one of the emotions that can cause cataplexy, and you see she's getting really, really angry. And then you can just imagine she's getting the head bob with the emotion. So let's talk about some general descriptions of cataplexy. Sometimes cataplexy will present years after the excessive daytime sleepiness and a long time after the initial diagnosis of narcolepsy. So if you've had that diagnosis, you need to be aware, and everybody around you needs to be aware, that the cataplexy symptoms can be vague, they can come on subtly, they can come on after time, and they can look different in everybody and in different age groups. So the head bobbing, we're all quite aware of that, the neck giving away. But starting from your head and going down, you can have drooping of the eyelids, where the eyelids just look real heavy and even uneven, drooping. It can have cataplexy of the eye muscles, which causes blurred vision, double vision, trouble focusing. You can have raised eyebrows, and that's a little bit more common in some of the pediatric cases. With the muscles of the jaw, you can have jaw weakness. You can have slurred speech, which sometimes make people think substances may be involved, like alcohol or other substances. Stuttering. In the pediatric population, especially that have cataplexy, they can have an opening of the jaw weakness, and tongue protrusion. And it almost looks Downs-like, but it kind of comes on with emotions. An unusual facial weakness or movement. Okay, so the drooping of the face or even a jerking sensation. And that symptom, some of these symptoms along the face that are associated with cataplexy, it's really, really important to get third-party history, because if you ask a patient, do you have unusual facial weakness or movement, they wouldn't know that. So it's my opinion, third-party history is always an important part of cataplexy. Going down the body, you can have shoulder weakness, arm weakness, where you drop things, hand weakness. People with cataplexy frequently drop things, and you'd be surprised how common it is in the history of people with cataplexy to have had to replace their cell phone multiple times because they've dropped it. Inability to write. or dropping their pens, like the writing, they can be going along and then it'll suddenly get really, you can't hardly read it. Because their muscles have gotten weaker, or they drop the pen. I remember one patient telling me when she filled out an emotional kind of report at work, she kept dropping her pen. And the other people will say you can see where you can read what I'm writing, and then suddenly it's kind of like a scribbly line, because those muscles of holding that are involved in holding the pen have gone weak. Clumsiness or tripping over things, unexplained falls, leg or ankle weakness. One patient told me they had to quit wearing high heels because if somebody told a joke, they would fall, twist their ankle, and they had a swollen, twisted ankle several times. The knees buckling is very common. That's what people, or common as in, that's what people commonly think of with cataplexy, the knees buckling and falling to the floor. You can have trembling of the knees, the complete collapse, or the body going limp. Other descriptions are slumping or melting. So let me explain what I mean by that. I had a patient come in once, and she and her husband came in, and they were referred to me for unusual neuro stuff. Ended up she had lots of sleepiness, but she had this episode where there was some family conflict going on, and she was sitting on the front porch, and all of a sudden she just kind of went limp against her husband. She kind of just slumped down. And so they thought it was something neuro, something happened because there was lots of stress. And then this happened. And did she have a stroke or what was going on? So they're describing this symptom to me. I'm thinking that could be cataplexy. And I said, if anything like this happens again, get your cell phone and take a video. And they went, we have a video. And I was so happy because the video showed me, and it truly, they didn't do it as it was happening, but you could see how slumped down she was. And what was important about it, she said, I could hear what was going on around them. I just couldn't move anything. So slumping or melting, falling, and sometimes because when people with cataplexy actually melt or slump or fall, and they fall, they don't get hurt when they fall. And some providers will think, that's not fainting, they must be faking, which couldn't be further from the truth. But we need to be aware that's a symptom of cataplexy. The slurred speech we've talked about, but you can also have a fading out of the speech. So they're talking and it gets kind of quieter, and it's so the speech is going away. Or an uneven smile, or the smile disruption. So just one half of their mouth is smiling or just down a little bit. Uneven opening of the eyelids. Almost stroke-like symptoms, like the lady I was telling you about that had the slumping. They were thinking she had a stroke. Or frequent or unexplained accidents. I'm very accident prone, is what one of my patients told me. I fall all the time. I've always got a twisted something. I've hit my face. I hurt my wrist, all from falling, because if they truly do have cataplexy and it happens really fast, whatever hits first gets hurt. Okay, so now let me give you some descriptions that my patients shared with me about cataplexy. The first one says, something I didn't know was cataplexy. I didn't know what it was, and now I know. The other one says, it's kind of blocked out here, I can't see it, that, he didn't know he had cataplexy, and he got up on the high dive at the swimming pool, and that was his first episode of cataplexy because his knees just buckled. Another patient said, I get stuttering with extreme sleepiness. One patient complained of some slight enuresis, which is a little voiding of urine. My legs give out. I have balance problems with cataplexy because the muscle weakness can go, it's weak, come back, it's weak. So it can seem like they're off balance, very clumsy. Here's one that's pretty descriptive. My whole body gets weak with laughter. And one of my patients is so sweet, but has a lot of anxiety. said that she would get so anxious when she was pouring her stuff together to make her Xyrem that she would be afraid she'd spill it, that she would have cataplexy in her hands, and then she would spill her Xyrem. So we had to come up with, her husband had to do all the mixing. Another patient said that extremes in heat made them feel like they were having cataplexy too. Another patient, when I was asking about cataplexy, said, yes, certainly I do. Sometimes I fall upstairs when I'm angry or laughing. And he told me of an episode where he and his girlfriend were fighting, and he was walking up the stairs, and he had a significant episode of cataplexy, fell and hit his head and had to get stitches. Another patient told me, I don't laugh anymore. I don't even talk much. I'm like a shell of myself. I tried to avoid the cataplexy. So they're kind of shutting down. I had a patient that I treated for years that I was absolutely convinced she had depression. And I would ask her every time, and she said, no, I'm not depressed. But she was so, so flat. And next time I'd see her, I'd say, are you sure you're not depressed? No, I'm fine. Everything's good. But after this went on for some extended time, we were talking more about her cataplexy. She said that she had such significant cataplexy, and her children had learned what they could do to make her have cataplexy, like get her angry or get her laughing, and then they could get away with things or run off or whatever. She had trained herself to have no reactions. So think of that for a minute. A mother who's a blank slate, no emotions, raising these little kids who learn what's appropriate for the world based on expressions from their mother. So that's very significant, but they're so afraid of the cataplexy that they want to have no emotions at all. And that can look, like I said, like depression, and when it may not be at all. My hands don't work well. I drop my pencil. I have cataplexy with any negative emotions when I'm anxious, overwhelmed, exacerbated, my chest feels heavy. I feel like I can't hold my body up. I'm very weak. And then what I mentioned earlier about especially the facial stuff, but sometimes patients alone are not the best historians about cataplexy because they may not realize some of the stuff that's happening. And so these are some of the things that family members have said. Sometimes your eyes look suddenly sleepy when you're describing something. Your head almost fell on the plate when you were talking about that. Your speech slurs sometimes. And so sometimes people with narcolepsy are accused of using drugs or alcohol. Did you know you stutter? Remember how we used to make you laugh so we could see you fall to the ground? Are you drunk or something? You are so clumsy. There's not even anything to fall over there. So you got to ask the family too. And then if you think you have cataplexy, you think somebody, family member, or patient, somebody has cataplexy, it's important to try to figure out what emotions can set it off. And it's not just one emotion. Sometimes there's two or three big emotions, but there's usually a couple that kind of have created a pattern of cataplexy. And so beware, if laughter is it, then be sitting down when you're telling a joke. Or if laughter is what causes cataplexy in your sister, don't tell a joke while she's walking down the stairs. Or if laughter causes cataplexy and your husband is driving, don't tell a joke while they're driving. So part of figuring out, do I have cataplexy, is also what kind of things precipitate it, and not that you can never laugh and never be stressed or angry, but don't do them in the middle of doing something that could be dangerous. So stress can trigger it, anger, happiness, being glad, fearful, surprised, embarrassment, being tickled, sexual activity, annoyance, frustration, being caught off guard. Somebody comes and surprises you and you feel that scared, and then jumping sensation. Some people with narcolepsy will then have cataplexy. Humiliation, a loud noise, feeling ashamed, sighing, feeling flustered. Anticipation of saying something funny is common especially in like pediatric or adolescents things. So they get so tickled when they're getting ready to tell a joke, they get so tickled and so emotional that they have some cataplexy. Unexpectedly meeting a friend. I can imagine that to be true. I have a friend of mine from high school, Holly, that I run into in places at stores and different places. And I am so excited when I see her that it's just it just thrills and tickles me. And that's a strong emotion. Now, if I had narcolepsy, I bet you that would precipitate some cataplexy or feelings of joy from like music or movies or family events. Think back to the first time you saw Star Wars and that music was playing and there was that rising sensation and it creates some kind of an emotional experience. People with narcolepsy, with cataplexy could possibly have cataplexy with that, or listening to really elaborate music can bring up an emotion and precipitate cataplexy. All right, we're going to move on to the next symptoms. So next I'm going to talk about is sleep paralysis. And before I can explain it, I want to tell you a couple things about the different stages of sleep, if you don't know. There are two different kinds of sleep. There's REM sleep and non-REM sleep. So REM sleep is when you do the majority of your dreaming. Non-REM sleep is kind of everything else. During REM sleep, your brain's very active. You're dreaming, lots of stuff going on, but your body is usually paralyzed. Because unless you have another sleep disorder called REM behavior disorder, or you have the sleep paralysis, you want your body to be paralyzed while you're dreaming that, you're in a fight or you're jumping off of something or you're running away, because you don't want to be acting out everything that's going on. During non-REM, there's 3 stages, 1, 2, and 3. Stage 1 is very light sleep. Stage 2 is a lighter stage of sleep. And stage 3 is a deeper, more restorative state of physically, which is often disrupted in narcolepsy, and I'll mention to you later. But sleep paralysis involves REM sleep. So what happens is the patient wakes up during REM sleep, but they still have the paralysis of the REM sleep where they feel like they can't move. Now, sleep paralysis is not specific to just narcolepsy. People that are overly sleep deprived, a lot of doctors, residents, truck drivers have had sleep paralysis because they're not getting good enough sleep. So this one symptom can't diagnose narcolepsy, but it can be part of the picture of narcolepsy. And it can sometimes be really scary for patients. They can complain of feeling trapped. And it's often been misdiagnosed as nocturnal panic attacks. Patients have said it's like I'm lost in my body. I can't get up. My legs are weak. My arms are weak. My legs feel like they weigh a ton. And I just have to wait until everything evens out before I can get up. Like a dark face holding me down. You can have sleep paralysis not only with your big sleep at night, but also with naps. This patient said they have them with most nights and most naps. And this was a very good description by a patient of mine. And he told me this years and years ago, and I still remember it. He said, it's like sleep drowning. Have you ever been on the lake and you're just right under the surface of the water and you feel like you can't pull yourself out for a minute? And when he said that, I really got it. That was a great description. That's why I love to hear descriptions from patients. I learned so much. I mean, I really got it that day. Another symptom you can have with narcolepsy is hypnagogic hallucinations. So there are 2 types, hypnagogic or hypnopompic. So hypnagogic hallucinations are hallucinations that occur as you're going to sleep. The way I memorized this when I was in medical school is that hypnagogic has go in it. So you're going to sleep, and hypnopompic is when you're coming from sleep. So this is not a psychotic disorder. This is a sleep disorder because these hallucinations only occur with sleeping, with naps, or the real sleep period at night. And it can be visual, auditory, smells, a sense of touch. really dramatic dream kind of like stuff. And here are some statements from patients. I'm not crazy, am I? I hear doors shutting when I'm going to sleep. I will not nap due to the hypnagogic hallucinations, which leads to panic. It's like it's happening in real life and I'm going to sleep. I can dream before my brain shuts down. Wide awake dreaming. Okay. So it's abnormal sensory sensations that occur when you're going to or coming from sleep. So you're not quite asleep, but you're not quite awake. All right. I wish I had $1 for every time I said this. Narcolepsy is a 24-hour-a-day disorder. We think of it as just the sleepiness during the day, but they often have very disrupted nighttime sleep too. I'll go back to the metaphor I used earlier about the light flickering, like you turn it on and it's flickering. So when you're awake, you have little flickers of sleep during wake, which causes excessive daytime sleepiness and micro sleeps, causing you not to be as alert and aware as you should be. The same thing happens in a lot of patients who have narcolepsy. They have flickering of wake during sleep, and they may not completely wake up. But remember when I talked to you about the non-REM sleep, and it has 3 stages, 1, 2, and 3? 3 is the deeper, more restorative state of sleep. So what the flickering might do is you kind of get down and you're in sleep and it arouses you to 2 and you go back to sleep and you may go up to 1. You might wake up all the way, but you're kind of doing this during your sleep. So what happens is you may sleep 5 or 6 hours, but it's not good, deep, long restorative sleep, not good long periods of non-REM stage 3, and usually not uninterrupted REM either. So, and you may have more REM sleep, which may be the cause of more vivid dreams and more nightmares. And you may have REM sleep that starts earlier in the night. So daytime stuff is not correct and nighttime stuff is not correct. So it's a 24-hour-a-day disorder. I've already mentioned all of that, but the other thing to keep in mind is narcolepsy, like other sleep disorders, they all run hand in hand. So a patient with narcolepsy may also have restless legs or may have sleep apnea, could have depression or anxiety, chronic pain issues, kicking. Periodic limb movement is like a kicking or a twitch of your foot or a hand or something during sleep, and it causes your sleep to go from being very deep to more fragmented. So just because you're sleepy and just because we think you have narcolepsy doesn't let you off the hook for all these other things. We always have to be aware of what else might be developing or unrecognized. And so I thought this patient was a good definition of the sleep at night. You have narcolepsy, you're so sleepy, you can take little naps and go to sleep, but you try to go to sleep and you can't go to sleep. So here are some of the descriptions of the insomnia that my patients have said. I feel like my dreams are super, super real when I wake up. I'm sleepy, and then when I lay down at night, I can't sleep. I'm sleeping, but I don't feel rested. It's like I'm in and out of sleep all night long. So the flickering. At night, I can't sleep. In the morning, I can't wake up. So it's a disruption of the sleep-wake cycle. And here's what they hear from other people. You can't have insomnia if you have narcolepsy. If you wouldn't nap so much during the day, you could just sleep at night. If you would just make yourself get up, you can do it, you'd feel better. Drink some more coffee. Have you tried Red Bull? Drink less coffee. That caffeine is keeping you up at night. You never, and then fill in the blank, help out around here, want to have sex, want to go anywhere. You sleep at all night. You sleep all day. So they complain about them sleeping, and then when the patient complains of not sleeping, sometimes family members, even doctors, are not so understanding of the symptom, but we need to aggressively treat it too. So we'll move on now to brain fog. And that's not specific to narcolepsy either, but brain fog is slowed down thinking, difficult time focusing, trouble multitasking, a lack of mental clarity, and mental fatigue. Just like you have physical fatigue, when you have narcolepsy, you have sleepiness, and a lot of times you have decreased energy, which is physical fatigue. You also can have mental fatigue. So it's just harder to put things together, to complete things, to follow a sentence, to read a book. It's just fogginess. And it can be secondary to just to plain old sleepiness, or to the micro sleeps, or to the non-restorative sleep. It can be due to associated depression or anxiety. It might be due to some of the medications we've prescribed, or menopause, brain injury, other sleep disorders. So the brain fog is not specific, but certainly can be of issue to those with narcolepsy. A recent study in 2024 by Rosenberg said 3/4 of patients with narcolepsy and idiopathic hypersomnia, which is another disorder of excessive daytime sleepiness, have brain fog. You need to rule out other medical disorders that could cause brain fog, like thyroid problems, B12, iron, coexisting depression, anxiety, sleep disorders. We don't have time to talk about all the environmental things that could be causing sleepiness and disrupting sleep, but certainly that's of issue. And here's what some of my patients have said. It's as if I'm walking through sludge. I'm missing parts of conversations. I can't absorb the details. I love this one because I'm a photographer. It's like the camera is out of focus in my mind. I really got that. My husband swears he tells me things I have not heard. Could be a micro sleep occurring right then. I can't think fast enough. I'm in a daze, a fog at times. Sometimes I just cannot complete my work assignments no matter how hard I try. I am just not thinking right. Focusing while in school is very difficult for me. So depression and narcolepsy can go hand in hand. And like I mentioned to you earlier, they're often confused in diagnosis. I think when patients present to primary care, and sometimes the sleep doctors complain of being sleepy and I have no energy and I can't focus, mostly people jump to the diagnosis of depression first before they look for a sleep disorder. And depression can start in people who have narcolepsy way before they've ever been diagnosed with narcolepsy, if they have these symptoms and they're struggling all the time. So they're very sleepy. They can't complete things. People get mad at them for not participating. They call them lazy. They feel irritated, overwhelmed, guilty, frustrated, all those symptoms I described early on. That goes on, and they get depressed often. They really don't know why, but it's just they can't keep up in life. Then sometimes when people actually get the diagnosis of narcolepsy, they're so excited, they're so relieved, somebody finally understands. There's a label to this. But then everybody doesn't rally around and try to figure it out, and so they're left as a little island here with all these symptoms, and people around them are like, what is narcolepsy? What do you mean you can't do this? So then the efforts have to be about education and letting people know. And then depression can occur after you've had it for a while and you're just struggling. You're just struggling. You're not on the right medicines. We haven't tried all the behavioral things. We're not looking at symptoms throughout the day. And so it becomes such a struggle and an effort that the depression comes then. So you can certainly have depression and narcolepsy together. They can interfere and they both make each other worse. But for just a minute, let's look at the symptoms of depression versus narcolepsy. So when we think of depression, we're thinking decreased sleep, decreased energy, decreased concentration, decreased memory, decreased interest, decreased motivation, tearfulness, and isolation. Those are things we screen for, and those are the symptoms we're checking for. Sounds a little bit familiar, doesn't it? So then when we're thinking of narcolepsy, we're thinking excessive daytime sleepiness, cataplexy, disrupted nocturnal sleep, trouble with concentration and memory, social isolation, and canceled plans. So what's the big difference there? Cataplexy. So cataplexy, identifying cataplexy, knowing what it is, how we treat it, is important in distinguishing type 1 versus type 2 narcolepsy, and can be important in deciding what medicines we use to treat it. But it's also important in helping us distinguish depression versus narcolepsy. So cataplexy can really help if we can identify it. There's a lot of anxiety associated with narcolepsy, generalized anxiety, panic, and disorder, performance anxiety. How am I going to do when I go out? I've got this big event. I don't want them to see me sleepy. What if I have cataplexy? Then sleep paralysis called nocturnal panic. Medication induced. A lot of the medicines we use, stimulants to help people stay awake, actually cause anxiety. OCD, financial stress because of limitations, family conflict, a lot of things can contribute to anxiety and narcolepsy. And let me mention for a minute the importance of antidepressants. Now, the number of people who are on antidepressants in the United States and across the world is growing like crazy. We use antidepressants for depression, anxiety, panic, all kinds of different things. And a lot of people have both the depression and the narcolepsy, so they're on antidepressants, and they may have been accidentally treating their cataplexy, because antidepressants are used to treat cataplexy. So if you suddenly stop your antidepressant and start having weird symptoms, that may be a possibility that you had some cataplexy that's kind of returned. But the other important thing you need to know about antidepressants is if you're on antidepressants, when you have your MSLT examination, not all antidepressants, but the majority of them suppress REM sleep. So it can give you a false negative on your MSLT report. So you need to know if you're one of those people that says, no, I don't have narcolepsy. I had that test. They've ruled it out. Well, that's not true. We diagnose all kinds of different ways, but if you were on an antidepressant at the time of your study, you may need to repeat the MSLT, and you would have to hold the antidepressant for a specific time, not just stop it the night before. You need to let it get out of your system. But there are other ways to diagnose narcolepsy using DSM-5 and different things and new things coming out. So antidepressants, mixed bag for you. And some of the medicines we use to prescribe to treat narcolepsy and cataplexy can also cause depression and anxiety. So everything's tied together here. And then the question about caffeine comes up a whole lot for me. So people who are really sleepy drink a lot of caffeine, and they drink a lot of caffeine all through the day. And some people will say, I can drink caffeine and go right to sleep. It doesn't bother me. Some studies suggest that it keeps you in lighter stages of sleep. Some people have more trouble with caffeine than they realize. One study there by Drake in 2013 showed that even coffee 6 hours before sleep can disrupt sleep. And in 2008, it can disrupt the quality and daytime functioning. And then using 6 to 8 cups of coffee can cause anxiety-like symptoms. So is it the narcolepsy causing anxiety? Is it true anxiety? Is it caffeine excess in combination with stimulant use, where you have palpitations, panic attacks, sweating, irritability? But so caffeine is not a benign substance. It's helpful, used in moderation, but 6, 7, 8 cups, probably not a good thing. Let me see the time here. Getting close to the time, let me just run through a couple of things. Relationship issues are usually there in people that have very significant narcolepsy because the sleepiness interferes. So when you have a patient who has narcolepsy, the one person has the disorder the family has to deal with the illness, whether that's the partner, the kids, even the coworkers. But the symptoms, the one person with narcolepsy is often struggling so much. They're just treading water to keep up. But there are still all these people around them who need things. So it's a systems problem that causes relationship problems. They need to be very aware of that. I think therapy is a good idea for anybody who has narcolepsy, period. Because there's just lots of stressors and things you can look at and behavioral things we can do. But I think it's also important to look at couples therapy. How do we keep this strong? We need to keep this strong. They need to support you. You need to support them. And it can even cause issues with sex, with that relationship. Because one partner may be thinking, we've made it through the evening, we got the kids' homework done, everybody's had their shower, we're going off to bed, we're going to have some cuddle time. And a person with narcolepsy will be heading to bed drooling almost, thinking, I'm ready to go to sleep. So that's not working out, and can lead to frustration. So that's a conversation you may have to have your partner about planning cuddle time earlier in the day, maybe after your closer to time when you're taking your awake promoting drug or stimulant, using another room besides the bedroom, because the bedroom is what the narcolepsy patient associates with sleep. I can't wait to get there. I got to get to sleep really fast. They may not even associate it. So maybe using the guest room. So there's some behavioral things you can do about that. But I think I didn't want to not mention the importance of the people around you when you have narcolepsy. And so we need some non-sexual kind of bonding, and you need to support them at other times when you're doing really well. Nurture the nurturer. I saw a webcast by, oh shoot, oh, I'm drawing a blank on her name. Anyway, she was talking about how couples, and they would rate the relationship, how they're doing each evening when they come home on a scale of 0 to 100. And they'd say, Brene Brown, I'm having a really hard day. I'm at a 60. And he might say, I am really wiped out. I'm at 25. So even though she's only 60, he's only at 25%. Something's got to give. So they're going to try to meet in the middle and realize not everything's going to get done. What can we do? So kind of a daily rating scale of, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm at with my sleepiness. And you can do that with other people. You have other people in your life who are support people. Like if you know your sleepiness on a scale of 0 to 10 is at an 8 and you're supposed to pick your kids up at school, you need to have somebody on your support team that you can call and say, hey, can you grab the kids? Or, talk to your husband. I'm on my way home, but I am dying today. I'm so sleepy. I am at a 3. Could you pick up a pizza? So use the rating scale to let them know where you are, and a rating scale to let your couple know, the couples know how you're doing. So quickly, I do realize we're about out of time, especially for questions. My writing partners and I, Laura Harper and Lewis Cass, we've wrote a questionnaire called the NAPS questionnaire. And we're trying hard to get it published right now. So send us prayers or good vibes or cross your fingers, whatever you do, that happened. But we wrote a questionnaire to try to help people look at cataplexy and different sleep symptoms. And we do have it up on my website at drdebrastultz.com, because we have all of our patients fill it out. We have our new patient paperwork there, and we have this questionnaire and different things there. So my writing partners and I took a long time writing this questionnaire. Then we've been using it in our office for the last 6-12 months to kind of gather research and see what we could do. And with this questionnaire, I'll show you bits of it here. We created 3 different parts, one for the patient to fill out, one for a family member or friend to fill out, and one for the clinician to kind of monitor. So within the patient part, there's a place where we ask, what are your 3 specific goals? Because as a provider, I don't know what they want to do. They want to feel less sleepy. It's more than, I want you to do better on your Epworth sleepiness scale, which most of you have taken. If you can be real specific, I want to be able to go to my son's baseball game. I want to have less than 7 cataplexy attacks a week. I want to be able to feel good enough on the weekend that I can go on a date night with my husband. Some specific goals like that. The patient lists them out on the questionnaire. The clinician, when they review the NAPs, says, okay, these are the things that are important to you. We're going to follow them. So between now and when you come back in 4 to 6 weeks, let's see how that goes. So they can dictate it into their note, know what the goals are, and then they can rate it. Going with the scale of +3, meaning they've done really well, to -3 on how we're doing with the goals, so that we can fine-tune your treatments. And the friends and family section is very important because, like I said about cataplexy, they can tell you stuff that maybe you don't know about or recognize, but they also make important comments about the sleepiness. So we use that to follow patients. We ask them on that scale of 0 to 10, how you've been doing over the past week. One of the other things that we think is real important about this scale that we found very helpful with our patients is to look at how's your sleepiness in the morning, and we do 8 to noon. And then the afternoon, noon to 6, and then in the evening, 6 to 10. And that helps us fine tune, do we need to change them to a long-acting stimulant? Do we need to add a PRN of a stimulant in the afternoon? Do we need to give them just 5 milligrams of Ritalin so they can make it to the baseball game if they take it before? So we can work together to create a plan that works to get symptoms controlled all day, not just during 8 to 5 when you're at school or at work. And we can place the naps when we need to during the day. So we feel like this questionnaire creates more of a team approach in treatment. And how many naps a day are you taking? Are you having sleep paralysis? We go through the normal things. We have a place on there to ask for cataplexy. And so each time that patient reads it, they're looking at, these are the symptoms of cataplexy. Each time that doctor reviews that questionnaire, they're going, oh yeah, these are the symptoms of cataplexy. So what we're hoping is this questionnaire will help increase awareness for not only patients, but providers. And then we screen for other disorders. So if you want to look at that, feel free to go to my website. There's also an excerpt from the book on dealing with insomnia, things to do for insomnia. So with the book, I wrote it. This is not the sales pitch. This is to tell you what's in the book. I wrote it to try to help people with narcolepsy understand it better, give it to somebody else who might understand it better, talk about family things, talk about insomnia, talk about pregnancy, what's it look in pediatrics. But we also talked about the importance of letting people know. So one of the things we have recommended is that people get I don't know if you can see this. If they're taking naps along the side of the road, if they're sleepy and they have to pull off, something to put in the windshield so that people don't think it's drug use and come running with Narcan. Or we've recommended that to help people understand, you have a little sign that says, I have narcolepsy with cataplexy. Here's what you do. So people around them will know what to do. So, hopefully there's some helpful tips in there. If you're interested in the book, you can get it at the website or on Amazon. And napping is necessary. Napping is necessary if you have narcolepsy. It's like your cell phone. Your cell phone completely runs out of energy if you don't charge it up. So if you don't charge it long enough at night, it's not going to work. If you use it a lot during the day, it's going to die. So you have to charge it up. So napping is necessary for narcolepsy. There's so many behavioral things you can do. I've mentioned already that behavioral therapy, talk therapy for the family, lots of combinations of medicines. We end up layering medicines a lot for narcolepsy. There's some really good new medicines and exciting research going on. And we've got to increase awareness. And you've got to increase the awareness in your support system. So the reason I put this picture here is that this person who's obviously struggling looks kind of sleepy. There's 3 people back there and they're looking. They want to help and they don't know how. So part of what you need to do, part of your job is not only explaining this is what it is, these are the symptoms, this is what it looks like. Make a top 10 list. If you see me struggling, these are the things that might help, because they don't know. They don't know exactly what would help, and I don't know what's going to help that day. And do the rating scale of 0 to 10. Today I'm at an 8.5 and say, okay, would it help if I went and got milk and bread? You know, would it help if you took a 20-minute nap and I fixed dinner for the kids? You know, make a top 10 list, because the frustration of, well, they don't know what to do, and the frustration they feel of, I don't know what to do, is really hard. So share the awareness of this disease, educate those around you, think about yourself, which symptoms really apply to you. Work with the team of providers that can help you. Consider therapy for yourself and your significant others, and always be looking for answers and things you can do. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope just describing and hearing how my patients describe the symptoms can help you put into a little bit more detail what you need to share with your provider. I think there are some providers that are better at narcolepsy than others. So if you're not feeling like you're getting what you need, then shop around to somebody who's a narcolepsy nerd, so to speak. So I wish you all lots of luck. I'm happy to help in any way, and let's see what's going on. Any questions that we have here? Is the inability to wake up in the morning another symptom? Yes, possibly. That seems to be the biggest challenge that impacts my life in a negative way. So many alarms and phone calls to get myself out of bed, only for me to knock out of the toilet and be late for work. Anyway, okay. Yes, some people with narcolepsy have a lot of trouble waking up in the morning, but there's another sleep disorder that I briefly mentioned called idiopathic hypersomnia, and those people have a great deal of difficulty getting up in the morning. So those 2 disorders are kind of closely related. They're differentiated by findings on the MSLT and or the presence of cataplexy, because with idiopathic hypersomnia, you don't have cataplexy. If your MSLT is positive, that usually means narcolepsy. But people with idiopathic hypersomnia are by nature longer sleepers than people with narcolepsy, and they have great difficulty waking up. And it's a general rule. People with narcolepsy will take naps for 20 or 30 minutes and feel refreshed. People with idiopathic hypersomnia will sleep 10 hours at night, take a 2 or 3 hour nap, and then still feel sleepy. So there's some subtle differences, but yeah, that's a hard one. That's a really hard one. There's some uh, on Amazon, there's a sonic boom alarm clock. There's some different things they have for that, and the phone calls are one thing, and there's an alarm clock, and I can't think of the name of it, that kind of rolls on the floor and keeps alarming, so you can't just hit it. For people who have sleep disorders and can't get up. So investigating what's going on during your sleep, if you have another sleep disorder like restless legs or sleep apnea, that can make you really sleepy. But yeah, sleep is a hard one. How long typically to allow the SNRI to get out of your system depends on the medicine and their half-life. Some of the shorter acting half-lives, you would want to get out, it might be more likely 2 weeks, but if it's a really one that's a little bit longer, you might want to be off the antidepressants for a month. Or there's actually several medicines that can interrupt the findings on the MSLT, and you can ask about it at your sleep lab, or you can look it up online, but definitely you need to be off of it more than 5 to 7 days, and more like 2 to 3 weeks. Have you known of patients with narcolepsy having trouble continuing to work? Yes, I have. Unfortunately, some people do end up on disability, and it depends on the severity of the illness, the resources, the support system, what kind of work they did. So yes, that does happen. I hate it when that happens, but there's so many medicines, aggressive interventions, medicine with medications, aggressive behavioral things we can do. There are so many other medicines that can make you sleepy that you don't think of that we have to kind of review. So for instance, a lot of the allergy medicines make people sleepy. Certain ones don't, but some of them really do. But in the narcolepsy patients, that can make them really, really sleepy. So change in the allergy medicine can help. Same is true of blood pressure medicine. Some of the blood pressure medicines make you really, really sleepy, and others don't. Sometimes we just need to switch the medicines, the blood pressure medicines or the allergy medicines to nighttime, and that helps. Sometimes we have to switch altogether. But so we have to keep looking at all the things that might be contributing to sleep. But I have had people that have to go on disability. So I hate that. I support them one way or the other, but I always try everything I can to not do that. Can a 6-year-old take an antidepressant for cataplexy? So, okay. So that would be off-label. Some, yes, children take antidepressants. And we have narcolepsy medicines that are approved down to 6 years of age. In pediatrics, you can use sodium oxybate, Xyrem or Xywav, Xyrem, not, or Wakix in the pediatric population. But, and the antidepressants, we've used them for years in the pediatric depressed and anxious patient. Can you talk more about the subtle types of cataplexy? I can't think at all when I'm stressed. Can that be from cataplexy? Some sort of brain muscle paralysis. Maybe I would say that would be the brain fog or being overwhelmed. So if you're really, really stressed or you're really, really sleepy, because the sleepiness might be causing the concentration trouble. And I don't know that I would say it's a brain cataplexy, but I don't know. I've never heard anybody talk about that. But it certainly can lead to trouble concentrating and focusing. You can't multitask. You can't do things you normally could. Subtle cataplexy would be some, like the drooping smile or a minute's droop of the hand. The more major cataplexy is the falling in the floor and the head thing. And minor ones would be the dropping something or stumbling over something, but they can be subtle, drooping of one eye, drooping of your eyelids, the blurred vision, that'd be more subtle. Sometimes the stuttering or the slurred speech, and the slurred speech kind of comes and goes for just a little bit. That would be a subtle kind of cataplexy. The jaw just drooping for a minute would be subtle. The patient may not even know they're doing that. That would be where family history or a friend could tell them more about that. It would be more subtle. So look back at the list that I've included on there, or look at the list of the symptoms we've included on the naps if you want to. I think there are a lot of things that are probably subtle cataplexy that we haven't even really identified yet, because we're just getting good at identifying what is cataplexy.